Those were the discussions that were happening during the weekend, especially from the Speaker of the National Assembly, Moses Masika Wetangula, who will be leading the resumption of Parliament this afternoon, stating that they will focus on the IEBC's reconstitution, but it has hit a snag and delays given that it has been taken to the corridors of justice, especially in the formation of the selection panel, where there was a bit of tiff between Augustus as well as Kokiomuli, and that was precipitated by the Wiper Party leadership that decided to make the change between Augustus and Ambassador Kokiomuli. And of course that and so much will be unfolding in the coming weeks. But we also do have what we call the boundaries delimitation that have been delayed to that aspect, given that Article 89 of the Constitution provides for 290 constituencies from where the members of the National Assembly are elected or appointed, whose names boundaries shall be reviewed by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC. Also, this will be done in intervals not less than 8 years and not more than 12 years, provided that the review shall be completed at least 12 months before the general election. That has not happened, with the IEBC clearly stating they have no powers, given that the Secretariat is there. Now, to take us through this conversation this morning is none other than Vincent Kisukwa, the Advocate of the High Court of Kenya. Wakili, good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning, my brother.
Maybe we pick it up, Wakili, from there. You've just heard from the Speaker of the National Assembly and the various civil society. Where are we in terms of this IEBC's reconstitution?
First, let me acknowledge the fact that the President has done a very noble thing for sending the IEBC Amendment Bill 2024 into Act. This was done on the 9th of July 2024. At the moment, we don't have an IEBC already. The reconstitution process has not begun. We don't have IEBC commissioners on board. So where we are today, the selection panel, the names have just been released. But as you have said clearly, Augustus and Ambassador Kokiomuli, the Wiper Party has an issue in court, which means now we can't proceed, because it's from this selection panel that advertises these vacancies for either the chairman and the commissioners. When they advertise, now we begin the process. They publish the names, they shortlist, and they conduct interviews. It's within their mandate. So until we clearly finish up the issue in the court, then the selection panel now comes into force. It gains its authority and begins the shortlisting, the advertisement of the vacancies, and shortlisting and interviews. Then now you can proceed. Then now you can proceed and reconstitute IEBC, and we have a substantive commissioners in office so that we can move forward as a nation. Yeah.
But what does this portend, Wakili? Is this a recipe for a constitutional crisis in waiting?
Clearly it is. Clearly it is, because the Supreme Court clearly held that the IEBC are the commissioners, is not the Secretariat. The Secretariat draws the authority from the Commission. So when you don't have a Commission, things cannot proceed. There are wards in the country, there are constituents right now like Ugunja who don't have representatives. These are very vital for the development of this country. So at the moment, we're in a constitutional crisis, because when you don't have IEBC, things cannot move as a nation. The IEBC has lots of functions, and when we don't have the Commission in place, then there's a very big problem as a nation, which we really need to move forward, reconstitute the IEBC so that this nation can move in the positive direction. Yeah.
And Wakili, we have seen a lot of some of the court orders that have directed IEBC to do certain things that the Secretariat cannot achieve, but they are waiting for the IEBC commissioners to come in so that they can heed those court orders. So can we say the Secretariat that has been directed by the courts to do certain duties, are they in breach of not adhering to the court orders?
I think we're a dilemma, my brother, because once the court has issued those orders to the Secretariat to conduct a few issues, but again, the Supreme Court is the highest, the apex court in the land. The Supreme Court in its judgment held clearly that the IEBC is the Commission. So we are in a crisis because the court issues orders to the Secretariat to conduct these functions. Then the Secretary again reminds us that they are not the Commission, they are not IEBC. They only draw the authority from the Commission. So we're in a crisis because we are putting a Secretariat in a position between a rock and a hard place, because they have orders, but they don't have the authority, as per the Supreme Court judgment. So I think it's really high time that the Supreme Court will give an advisory opinion in this matter. Can the Secretary conduct some of these functions that is solely and squarely at the table of the Commission, which we now don't have in place as we speak? Yes.
And you're saying the same quagmire that we even saw the Secretariat led by the Chief Executive Officer, that is Hussein Marjan, wrote to the Supreme Court of Kenya asking for an advisory in terms of conducting the boundaries delimitation that was supposed to be conducted way back in March. So what are we foreseeing? Will the courts tell the Secretariat to carry out the boundaries delimitation, given that there are active court cases against the selection panel that is expected to appoint the commissioners?
I really foresee that much, because at the end of the day, the Constitution of Kenya is the supreme law of the land. What it dictates is what we have to abide to. We are a country governed by the rule of law. So what the Constitution stipulates is what we must move with, and we must obey that word by word. So we are at a high time. I think it's very tough for the Secretariat. I can imagine where my brother, Mr. Marjan, sits today, because he has court orders which he needs to abide by. But again, he's at a quagmire because he's also following up the Constitution and what it states word by word. Exactly.
And of course, to the people who, like for example, in Banisa, you've just said Ugunja, where the Member of Parliament, and that is Opio Wandai, was appointed as the CS of Energy. Banisa, unfortunately, they lost their legislator, as well as in various wards where they lost their legislators as well. And of course, there are other court orders that have been issued in election petitions that by-elections should be recarried, because the court cases that were filed for the current leaders who are in that office were told that they did not win according to the way they were supposed to. So what are the options the people in those wards and constituencies are left with?
At the moment, it's tough on the people, because as you've clearly said, the Secretariat has no authority to gazette for by-election. So it's only upon we as a nation to hasten the court processes. Then we have a fully reconstituted IEBC commission. Then once the commission is in place, now we can gazette for those elections. But I really think it's high time again that if we could amend the IEBC Act so that we delegate some of these powers to the Secretariat. Because it only entails the CEO of the IEBC to gazette a by-election in a particular ward or in a particular constituency, because we don't understand or exactly know how long it's going to take for us to fully reconstitute IEBC. But you have to keep it in mind that the people of Gunja, the people of Banisa ward, need representatives. They need representatives to represent them at the ward level, at the county level, I mean. And the people of Gunja needs a fully elected member of parliament to represent them in the National Assembly. Their issues have to be discussed. Their issues have to be addressed. The CDF fund has to work for the people of Gunja. The issue of representation, they have lots of myriad of issues affecting the people of Gunja, the people of Banisa. So we are at a position where we cannot foresee when IEBC will fully be reconstituted. But again, those people need representation. As I was saying, if we could amend the IEBC Act to delegate some of these powers, my brother, to the Secretariat, to gazette and conduct by-elections to the people, so that the people can fully understand and fully recognize and appreciate the role of representation, the role of oversight in the National Assembly, the role of legislation to their people at the ward level and at the constituency level, even at the county government level, because we never know. Maybe tomorrow, God forbid, we may lose a governor. Maybe tomorrow we might lose a Senate. Then how long are we going to wait for a whole county, for a whole senator to be what? To be elected again in a by-election? Because in a county government, it's easier. Once the governor is demised or removed from office, the deputy governor will take over. But that does not apply to other places like the Senate, like the constituency, and like the ward level. Yeah.
And of course, given that we have seen a lot of issues, especially when it comes to the succession line in various positions, like you're talking a member of parliament and a senator, you are talking about some of the amendments that were made in the recent IEBC Amendment Bill of 2024 that was assented to by President William Ruto. It had clear defined rules for the chair and the CEO. So in essentially, if you're saying we should donate powers, some powers to the CEO, don't we foresee we will witness the frictions that were witnessed between Chebukati and Chiloba?
You know, the issue of Chebukati and Chiloba, it really transpired much during the 2022 general elections, where there was a friction between the chair and the secretariat. But their issue was not governed by law. If we have clear laws that delegate this power to the secretariat, let me say to the CEO of the IEBC, and a clear law that delegates this power to the chair, then we have now an issue where there's a clearly defined role for who's to do this and who's to do what. This also we have witnessed recently in the 2022 general elections, where the Cherera Four, as we've called them severally, and the IEBC chair, where some of them are thinking that in the absence of the chair, then the vice chair can do those roles. Yes, that is clearly stated in the IEBC Act. In the absence of the chair, the vice chair acts on his behalf. In the absence of the chair and the vice chair, a member of the commission elected by the remaining 4 members can act as the chair of the IEBC. But now these are some of the amendments that have come with the IEBC Act 2024, where now the Act now clearly stipulates that the vice chair cannot act in the absence of the chair. If there's a vacancy in the office of the chair, another substantive appointment must be done to avoid these frictions that we witnessed recently. And it was a very big shame as a country, where we have a group of commissioners at the Serena Hotel, and the chair and his members and the 2 remaining commissioners at the Bomas of Kenya. It was a very big confusion as a nation. So clearly we should have all these roles stipulated in a statute, in an act of parliament, so that everybody runs on his lane, where nobody does this. Because it was very unfortunate to remember also that a commissioner was saying that him was granted a role at the parking. How can you delegate a parking duty to a commissioner? It was very unfortunate, my brother. Yeah.
And of course, in terms of role, we have seen various IEBC previous commissioners as well as chairs. Some of them are not even residing in the country. So what does that say even about the IEBC role? You're calling people to apply for these positions, but they know at the end of their term they will either be outside the country or they will require a lot of security. So what does that mean for the IEBC commissioner role? Should we as Kenyans apply for these positions, or should we avoid it altogether?
We really need to play for the role of IEBC commissioner. You know, the IEBC plays a very integral role in this republic. It's one of the most vital commissions that we have in this republic, because they dictate who becomes the head of state, who becomes the president for the next 5 years, the next 10 years, if he goes for a 2-term limit. So it's my calling upon every Kenyan that if you want to be a commissioner in the IEBC, you have to get out. You have to be ready to serve the nation. I wouldn't wish to imagine a scenario as we witnessed before, where we have an IEBC commissioner not serving the in the country. An IEBC commissioner is a very important commissioner, because he works on full-time basis. It's a full-time job as an IEBC commissioner. So if you don't need to work for the people, don't apply for that position. You have to be ready to be 24/7 available for the people of Kenya, because you matter so much to us as a nation, because you dictate who becomes, you arbiter who becomes our member of parliament, who becomes our MCA, who becomes our governor, and ultimately who becomes our president. You are the referee. So then you must fully be available for public service. Yes, there's no way to around it. If you want to stay outside, okay. If you want to remain in the country, stay in the country and serve the people from anniversary towers or anywhere that will be delegated by the chairman. Yeah.
But Wakili, then again, the question comes in, is there a good political will to allow these commissioners to do what they're expected to do? We have witnessed various political interference in the last previous elections that we have witnessed in this country. So is there that goodwill to allow these commissioners, when they come to the office, they will do what they are mandated to do and forego some of the external forces that are telling them to do otherwise?
We should ask ourselves first, why do we have this political interference? I think I've witnessed 4 or 5 elections in Kenya. The 2002 general election, I think I was still a young man. I was, I think, 11 or 12 years old. But in 2007, I witnessed that election. But you can attest and agree that from 2007, we have had issues either before or after elections. Then what does that tell us? Do we have men and women of integrity at the IBC as commissioners. If we have men and women of integrity, then we will not have political interference. It only comes to play when some of these commissioners are ready to be bribed. You're being bribed for a few millions of money at the expense of the lives of 40 plus millions of Kenyans. So we should raise the threshold for us to ensure that we have men and women of goodwill. Once we have men and women of goodwill, then we have our civic education, and we tell our political parties, and IBC should be a very neutral arbiter. Let them do their work. Go out there, campaign for your candidates. At the end of the day, let's accept the outcome of every election. Above all, I repeat, IBC needs men and women of integrity. The role of an IBC commissioner, the role of an IBC chair is a greater calling. The IBC chair is a greater calling. It's one of the most important chairmen that you have in this Republic of Kenya. Chairperson, as I will put it, just to ensure there is an issue of gender balance. Yes. Men and women of integrity.
Of course, and even in the selection panel, when some of those amendments were being assented to by President William Ruto, the clerk of the National Assembly, that is Mr. Njoroge, clearly stated, even in the selection panel, they need to adhere to this two-third gender rule. If you're just joining us, our viewers, we're talking about the reconstitution of IEBC that has delayed, especially with various court proceedings that are happening at the corridors of justice. You do know that once the President assented to the IEBC Amendment Bill of 2024 into law on July 9th, 2024, to guide some of the processes that require the selection panel to be formulated in the recommendations that were made in the NADCO report from 7 members of the panel to 9 members. And of course, we are waiting to see the Parliamentary Service Commission that is yet to appoint someone for this particular position, as well as the Law Society of Kenya, where some of those names will be listed. And once it is listed, Parliament is expected to forward those names to President William Ruto. That will allow the process now to start of the selection panel. But Wakili, here comes another question. The selection panel that was led previously by Augustus, it had already, when they came before the NADCO committee chaired by the majority leader of the National Assembly, that is Kimani Ichung'wah, and Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka, they said they had already shortlisted candidates. So do we anticipate the selection panel to save the taxpayers' costs, especially when it comes to finances? Are we going to see them, the same short list they had shortlisted, bring forth, as opposed to restarting the whole process again?
Yeah, they really need to restart the whole process. But as you can remember, the previous selection panel was disbanded by Parliament. We currently don't have the previous selection panel in office. These were some of the amendments that we wanted to put into the new act. So once the selection the panel was disbanded, then the NADCO report came into play, which also recommended the additional number of members in the selection panel from 7 to 9. Now, once we have that, now, as you've clearly stated, the Parliamentary Service Commission should forward a maximum of 4 names, 2 men and 2 women, to the Parliament. Then the Law Society of Kenya has 1 person. Then the Interreligious Council of Kenya has 2 persons. Then the Political Parties Liaison Committee should also forward 2 names. This will now bring us to the 9 members of the selection panel. But again, we really have to put in mind that even in the 9 members, we have to adhere with the two-third gender rule. We have to make sure that we include both gender, to ensure that if you have a maximum of 6 male, then you have 3 female. If you have a maximum of 6 female, then we have to ensure we have 3 males. Yeah, just to abide by the provision of the Constitution of Kenya. Yes, we have to ensure that we have two-thirds gender rule in the selection panel. Yeah.
And of course, those were some of the changes that were made within the panel. And of course, we do anticipate the Speaker, who clearly stated on that Sunday at a church service. Now, it's a little bit of correction there. The Parliamentary Service Commission is supposed to at least have 2 people one representing the majority and another representing minority, as well as the only people who are mandated to have at least 3 persons is the political parties liaison committee, and of course that is where the quagmire comes in between Augustus and Ambassador Kokimuli. And then of course the others are the Law Society of Kenya that are expected to send 1 representative, and finally the Interreligious Council are expected to send at least 2, and of course they were told to adhere to the 2/3 gender rule. And of course we're also talking about the boundaries delimitation that were expected to happen early this year, that were expected to be done in intervals of at least not less than 8 years and not more than 12 years, provided that the review shall be completed at least 12 months before a general election. Now, Akili, tell us the importance, if these boundaries delimitation are not done and we enter the electioneering period, what does this portend for not just the legislators but the constituent members residing in the 290 constituencies?
Yeah, it's a very important issue. These are one of the reasons why it calls for the reconstitution of IEBC, because we have to have the boundaries delimitation at least 12 months to the general election. It's very important because we've always pushed for the 1 man 1 shilling vote, and our population in this constituency is growing at a very alarming rate. So then we must ensure that once we have the IEBC commission in place, then we have to ensure that the boundaries delimitation of all our 290 constituencies are clearly looked into to ensure that we abide by the provisions of the Constitution of Kenya. It's very important for IEBC. It's one of the issues that should be given a maximum priority basis and to ensure that the same is adhered with before we enter into the 2027 general election, which is very important.
And for some people who are presenting issues, especially in the NADCO report, and they have seen the IEBC amendment bill at least being assented to by President William Ruto, but there were other outstanding issues within the NADCO report, especially touching on the country's governance system that required for constitutional reforms, other at least required parliamentary intervention. But if the IEBC Amendment Bill 2024 has been assented into law, is there hope for the other recommendations that were made within the NADCO report to be adhered to as well?
Yeah. There are very many grounds, but some of these issues can be handled by Parliament. Once the Parliament resumes as it's receiving today, they should look at it to the NADCO report. I found which of these important issues that have been left out in the amendment of the Act. Then once we do so, then as we progress, because the amendment of the Act is not a one-day thing, and we still have a few years to the general election 2027, so then Parliament can sit down, Parliament can discuss over these issues, and if there are things that we can still amend, we still have time to amend the Election Act, to make sure that once we get to amend the IEBC Act, to make sure that once we get to 2027, we have a fully functional, operative, effective, and an accountable act for the people of Kenya. It's not long lost, my brother. We still have time. Let us first consider what in the 2024 Amendment Act. We proceed and implement those things that are there, because I think the issues that are in the Amendment Act 2024 were the vital issues that really mattered on the reconstitution of IEBC. Once we have a fully functional IEBC, Parliament can work in liaison with the IEBC, with the Commission now, to ensure that we have an effective act as we approach 2027. Yes.
And of course, some of the issues like the country going for a referendum or a voice within that committee. So as a country, are we ready to go for a referendum to make those changes that were being recommended in the NADCO report?
Yeah, I think we as a country we are ready. But you know, a referendum takes a rather long process. And we can't have a referendum without the IEBC Commission. That's why I'm saying and I'm insisting that some of these issues are very important issues. They're very vital to us as a country. But let's not put ourselves where the Secretariat of the IEBC is today. That we can have lots of ideas, very good ideas, but we can't implement all these ideas without first reconstituting the IEBC Commission. Once you have a fully functional IEBC with substantive commissioners in office, then as a country I think it is high time we can sit down and look at a scenario whether are we really ready for a referendum. But as I always say, the 2010 Constitution is a very progressive constitution. Even before we rush into a referendum, have we fully implemented the 2010 Constitution? It's one of the most progressive constitutions in in Africa, if I not mention the world. So we fully need to understand, before rushing to a referendum, have we fully breathed life to the 2010 Constitution, being one of the most progressive constitutions that we have in the region and the world over? Yes.
And of course, given that we have a progressive constitution, has our constitution, you saw we marked at least 14 years, we're still celebrating that progressive document you're talking about. Has our constitution addressed these particular issues? And why as a country do we always find ourselves here? In only a year or 2 years to the next general election is when our IEBC is reconstituted, and that is where the IEBC is expected to handle these various cases. On top of that, right now, as a country, we are facing financial hurdles, especially when the president clearly announced that with the withdrawal of the Finance Bill of 2024, major cuts are experienced in not just the high-ranking government officials, but in commissions, independent institutions such as IEBC. So as a country, as and when these commissioners are in place, are there sufficient ground, enough resources to conduct what they are supposed to do?
We have to acknowledge, my brother, that we are in a very hard situation economically, based on the Finance Act 20.
Finance Bill 2024.
2024. But again, the Finance Bill 2024, just like the IEBC, we are always trying to not to cure the problem. The vacancy in the office of the IEBC chair, the office fell vacant on February 2023. The IEBC Act provides that the process for filling the vacancy in the office of the chair or any other commissioner should begin at least 6 months. At least 6 months. As a country, we didn't do that. So we are finding ourselves in a situation where there's an office, there's a vacancy in the office of the IEBC chair, plus 2 commissioners, when we ought to have begun this process way back as it stipulates or as provided in the IEBC Act. As we speak right now, I'll agree with the President, we are at a very harsh economic times. That even after we've had the substantive commission in office, do we have enough resources for a referendum? That is one. 2, is the referendum a priority at the moment? I will say it is not, because there are issues that the country or the government must first listen to and address. Our men and women recently in Turkana are going hungry. We need to spend some of these resources into making sure that we mitigate the hunger pangs in this country. So even as we proceed, we must ensure that at the moment we don't have enough finances to even run a referendum. But the most important thing first, that let's first have the IEBC in office. Because there are very many ways, even IEBC itself can raise revenues. There are issues. IEBCs are body corporate, it has property. There are gifts, there are donations that are being given to IEBC. But will that be enough? It is not enough. So I think as a country, first we now need to prioritize. But the most important thing that we must ensure that IEBC is fully reconstituted, that some of these issues, most of the present issues like the boundary elimination, the by-elections, to be addressed, gazetted, and those people elected, and the people have a substantive leaders who represent them at both levels of government.
And of course, quickly shifting into some of the recent issues that we've been witnessing in the country, especially when it comes to the adherence of court orders. We have witnessed what has happened between, that is Justice Mugambi, as well as the Inspector General of Police, who is in an acting capacity, that is Mr. Masengeli. I want to know, what are your thoughts on the recent happenings within the corridors of justice?
It's a very unfortunate day for the judiciary. And we being officers of the court, it's a very unfortunate day. Because Justice Mugambi acted within the province of the law. Nobody's above the law. And all of us must abide by the rule of law. The Acting Inspector General, Mr. Masengeli, was summoned by the court. He ran a application for contempt of court. And when a justice delivers a judgment in accordance with the law, then we should not experience what we witnessed recently on Sunday. The withdrawal of the security is a very unfortunate event. It's a tussle now between the judiciary and the National Police Service. So it's a very unfortunate event, and we as a judiciary and members of the court, we say no to that act, and we call upon everyone, the people of Kenya, that no one is above the law. Let us all abide by the rule of law. Let us all obey the court orders. If you're someone, appear in court, defend yourself. Everybody has a right to be heard. Why will you appear in court? We don't know.
And of course, what precedents did it set, given that it has been issued not just for the first time, even a previous IG, they say it had gone the same way. But in terms of Masengeli, he is already sentenced to 6 months imprisonment. So who is expected to effect those orders?
Masengeli is not above the law. So once then we have that, the National Police Service, he has a very long list of officials to ensure that the court orders are directed most of the times in court to a specific OCS. Then once now you're a convict, as he is today, the police must act within the law and make sure the orders are effected. He has a right to appeal. If he's not agreeing with the High Court orders, he can go to the Court of Appeal and appeal. But right now he has to obey the law. As we speak, he's a convict, and that has to come to place. And again, we must remember, it has come a long way, and it's at a very bad place. This is not the first time it's happening. You remember the Matiang'i issue? The Matiang'i issue when Miguna was being deported.
Yes.
There were myriad of court orders that the government disobeyed. So once the court orders are being disobeyed from the top, what do we expect from the junior officers? It's a very bad precedent, and we must come out together and say no to this country. Kenya is a very progressive country, our constitution and everything, and we are a country governed by the rule of law. Let us all obey court orders. Yes, we stand with Justice Mugambi.
Okay, and hold that thought. The National Police Service issued a statement in regards to that and said they have been drawn attention to statement issued by the Judiciary Service Commission, which was led by none other than the Chief Justice yesterday at the footsteps of the Supreme Court, assigned that by its chairperson, that is Honorable Lady Justice Martha Koome. In a statement, JSC alleges that the security details assigned to the Honorable Justice Mugambi was withdrawn over the weekend and supposedly, in their statement, to send a chilling message to the judiciary and the public at large that those entrusted with upholding justice can be intimidated, bullied, or against for their rulings. Now, in response, this is what the acting IG, who has failed to appear before the court, responded to, clearly stating that the National Police Service would like to clarify as follows: the responsibility for the independent command of the National Police Service is vested in the Inspector General, and no person may give a direction to the IG with respect to employment, assignment, promotion, suspension, or dismissal of any member within the National Police Service. In the view of the foregoing, the National Police Service wishes to rebut the allegation raised by JSC and assure that the country, that security of all Kenyans, judges included, remains our prime consideration. In particular, NPS notes that other than the President, the Deputy, and the retired President, no other Kenyan is entitled by law to be provided with personal security detail. Other persons are provided with personal security based on the criteria set out above and in the policies developed by the National Police Service, and may be determined by the IG from time to time. The tenure of judges does not, by that fact alone, include personal security as a matter of law. In the line with the VIP policies, VIPs are protected by special units, including security of the government. That is what the IG is saying. He's saying the only people who are mandated to get that kind of security is the President, the Deputy, the retired President, and no other Kenyan is entitled by law to be provided with personal security detail. Your views?
A very unfortunate remark. Very unfortunate. Why is just Mugambi an exception? How many judges do we have in this Republic of Kenya? How many Court of Appeal judges do we have in this Republic of Kenya? Have all the security been withdrawn? No. So if you say that nobody is entitled, then if that's the allegation, then why haven't they withdrawn the security for the other remaining judges? And where is it coming right now that Mr. Masengeli was convicted for contempt of court? It's very unfortunate. Let's not run away from the law. Let us not sugarcoat these issues. Let us call a spade a spade. If Mr. Masengeli was convicted for contempt of court, let him obey the court order. He has a right to appeal. There's a whole hierarchy. let him rush to court once he has obeyed that court order. The moment he's convicted of that offense, I don't even know where he derives his authority, even to respond to that statement from the Chief Justice.
And the other issue, just explain to us as Kenyans, we want to understand the security details for the judges, what basis, especially when it comes to the Constitution and the Judiciary Act, where is it envisaged that judges should get those security details, and how are they supposed to be deployed within the judiciary system?
Yeah, there are some of the policy guidelines that guide judges of the High Court, Court of Appeal, and the Supreme Court. You must accept that the issue of security of judges is not in the Constitution of Kenya. But again, we consider the kind of work these people do for the people of Kenya. Judges sit in the courts, judges meet very many people, and they handle a variety of cases. And so their security also comes to the play. Because today I'm handling a robbery violence victim, a murder suspect, a defilement suspect. Then we understand again there's a right to bail and bond, then these persons who walk out here freely. You never know what somebody might have brought to you. So now the judiciary policy guidelines stipulate that some of these judges be provided with security. And that again is the provision of the judiciary fund. It's them that they apply for these judges. It's the only two for the High Court judges. A driver and a bodyguard, just to make sure that our judges are safe even as they deliver their judgments in court. When they walk out there freely, knowing the security is not at stake. So it's very important, and it has happened over time. It's not something that just happened recently. Judges have been killed outside here. Magistrate yesterday, we had an issue in Makadara, where magistrates was shot in court. And also the magistrates were calling for security, which to me I think it's very important. So the issue of security is not something that we should debate upon, and most when it comes to judges of the High Court, judges of the Court of Appeal, and judges of the Supreme Court. Yes. And
what does it say about the independence, especially of an independent arm of government such as the judiciary?
Yeah, we are the judiciary is an independent arm of government, but again, these three arms of government work interdependently. Because tomorrow, the IG, now Mr. Masengeli, will have an issue on himself. He will run to the courts, and he will want the court to protect him. He is the same judge that you run to when you have an issue to protect your interest. Why would you do want to make sure that this judge is safe? So, in as much as our arms of government are independent, then the three arms of government must work cohesively and interdependently to make sure there's a smooth running of government. The arms of government, at the end of the day, they come together and form a single government. Yes.
And of course, the statement issued by the National Police Service, of course supervised by none other than the IG, said that such was the case for the Honorable Justice Mugambi's security. He further to says that the two officers, being on general duty officers, were recalled for purposes of attending VIP security courses. We are aware that suitable arrangements were made to ensure that Honorable Mugambi's security was always assured. So in that event, for example, if those two officers are recalled, what other avenues can the judges and magistrates use to ensure that they are secure?
In terms of security, I think when the National Police Service recalls a judge security, it has a duty to replace that security. The officers on general duty, they are not attached to the judges permanently. They can redeploy to other activities. But once an officer is redeployed, not withdrawn, we have to draw a line between withdrawing and redeploying. When I redeploy an officer, then I replace that officer with another officer. So in the argument that the officers were redeployed to other general duties, then they ought to have a duty to replace other officers attached to Justice Mugambi, because how else will he have security? He can't stay indoors. He has to report to work on Monday. Then how secure is Justice Mugambi that he reports to work at the Milimani Law Courts, yet just recently he issued an order for the conviction of the Acting Inspector General of Police.
But he says in the statement that Mugambi's security was always assured.
what assurance do we have? Because if it reaches a point now where the Chief Justice walks to the floors of the Supreme Court, then there's a problem. It is not assured. Then what austerity measures did they put in place to assure Kenyans, to assure Justice Mugambi that is safe? That they have not disclosed. And when visitors in Jerusalem, we know these things have happened before. It's not happening for the first time. They have been redeployed. As you remember, even the president once faced these things when he was the deputy president. He had issues. So when the acting Inspector General is telling Kenyans that they ensure that his security is in place, how did they do that? They ought to have made a very comprehensive statement that we redeployed and you took these 1, 2, 3 steps to ensure that Justice Mugambi's security is safe, coming at the heels of a very active conviction. And again, it begs the question, why were the 2 officers redeployed just after the passing of the judgment? There's more that meets the eye. Yeah.
And then the other question that you have not promptly answered, if the IG, the acting IG, has been convicted, I know the Justice Mugambi in his ruling clearly stated that the Interior Cabinet Secretary, that is Professor Kithure Kindiki, should ensure that those orders are adhered to and that he should be taken to prison. But the issue is, aside from the Cabinet Secretary for Interior, the National Police Service is also an independent institution. So aside from that acting IG, who else within the ranks of the National Police Service can effect such orders?
You remember we have 2 deputy inspector generals of police. Mr. Masengele is just one of them, who was the acting IG. We are left with the substantive Deputy Inspector General of Police representing the Kenya Police. The National Police Service Commission has a duty. They can again have an acting IG, because we already have 2 in place to effect those orders, I believe. Yes.
That we are waiting to see if that will happen. Yes, it's just a matter of time. We will see if those court orders will be adhered to. But then again, talk to us what it will mean, especially if we're seeing institutions, major institutions such as the National Police Service are not effecting such court orders. Then what happens to us as ordinary citizens? Are we going to abide to these court orders that are coming from the courts?
No, that's the unfortunate bit of it, because we are passing a very wrong message to ordinary citizens. And as I've said severally, Mr. Masengeli is just one but amongst very many sharks. The disobedience of court orders has always been there, and more so from top government officials. It is very unfortunate. And I said, if you're a father in a house, you should always lead by example. Because when you want to enforce, if the National Police Service today want to enforce an order against an ordinary citizen who has not obeyed a court order, then the acting Inspector General of Police himself is in breach of a court order. What message are we passing there? That now Kenyans must constantly obey court orders? No. Kenya is a country governed by law. And we say it and repeat it several times. When there's a court order, let's ensure everyone abides, respect the court order. There's no two way about it. We must all ensure that we obey court orders. And Mr. Masengeli not being an exception. But as I said, a conviction is not the end of life. Mr. Masengeli has a right to appeal. Let him exhaust all the avenues of appeal. Let him rush to the court of appeal if he so wishes. But as you speak, you can seek even bail pending appeal. But you seek bail pending appeal once you're already abiding or obeying the court orders. That's what exactly he should do, not writing these very many statements.
And of course, and before we conclude our segment here, we want to talk to you about the issue of going back to what we were discussing, the IEBC issue. There are already active cases within the court in terms of the reconstitution of the IEBC. You heard from the speaker earlier on before we started this program. He was clearly urging the Chief Justice Martha Koome to ensure that those cases are expedited. In those particular issues, can those cases be expedited?
Yes, exactly, can be expedited. The cases can be expedited because they are cases touching on public interest. We can just have direction from the Chief Justice that the following cases should be heard on priority basis. It has happened several times. When you have a very pressing issue, you only need to file a certificate of urgency. Then your matter is heard on priority basis. Where we sit today, the court matters in the High Court of Kenya, they should really be expedited to ensure that we have a smooth and fast reconstitution of the IEBC. Yes.
And
it's very important.
Wakili, before you give us your final remarks, I want to take our viewers to a function that is currently happening here in the capital in terms of the National SACCO. Speaking currently is the National Chairperson, that is David Matengwa here in the capital. I do understand our reporter, that is Yusuf Farah, is currently following up on that particular issue. It is the National SACCO leaders. So in terms of where the SACCO sector is, and of course our reporter, that is Yusuf Farah, is currently attending that particular seminar and will tell us more in our subsequent bulletins. But we are concluding on our first hour. But Wakili, let me give you a chance to say your final remarks on the IEBC issues and in terms of adhering to court orders as we conclude.
Upon the ascension of the IEBC Amendment Bill 2024 into law, I'll really urge as a country that we move with haste and have the selection committee in place to ensure that we begin the selection and the recruitment of the IEBC commissioners. That again will assist us along in making sure that we have the gazettement of the by-elections, then we have the diminution of the boundaries, and as a country move forward and start thinking about the issue of the referendum, if need be, which I don't think is appropriate right now. On the issue of the court orders, I repeat and I reiterate, Kenya is a country governed by law. Everybody, we are all to govern by law, and nobody is above the law. My brother, Mr. Masengeli, and any other Kenyan outside there must always ensure that they obey court orders. There's no two way about it. Yes.
Thank you so much. That is Wakili Vincent Kisukwa talking about the issues within the constitution of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, as Parliament resumes this afternoon. The Speaker assured that will be top on the agenda, urging the Chief Justice as well, that is Martha Koome, to ensure that the court cases that are hindering the selection panel to do what is expected to do, to ensure that they're expedited within the corridors of justice. That concludes our first segment, but in the second segment we'll be focusing on leukemia in children. Already our experts are here in a studio. That is Celine Kilanya, a pediatric oncology specialist and nurse at the Kenyatta National Hospital, as well as Dr. Bernice Mukuria, a pediatric hematologist, and finally Dr. Napo Mugomba, an oncology medical officer at the Kenyatta National Hospital. Where are we as a country in terms of addressing this killer disease, especially that is robbing us of our future? Don't go too far. That conversation is coming up next.